Welcome to The Path. This podcast is a production of the men's ministry of First Baptist Church in Hendersonville, Tennessee.
All right, welcome to the Path podcast. I'm Jeff Tarkington along with Foster Carney, and today we are honored to have Mike McClanahan on. He is the Minister of Missions of First Baptist Hendersonville. So we're going to get to hear some of his story and, what he does in his everyday life as Minister of Missions, and this, how he grew up, what he's gone through throughout his life, being a husband, father, and a minister. I'm really looking forward to this. I've known Mike for quite some time, probably over 20 years now. So looking forward to hearing from him today. So welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Foster. I'm excited and nervous at the same time. Standing on the shoulders of some great men that have been in this room before me, I've had the privilege of listening to all of the Path podcast, and man, the guys you've had on here are just incredible, solid, godly men, and what an honor to be here and be a part of this.
It's funny to me, we hear from guys coming on here that they're nervous and everything, and then they get in here and it doesn't come out as being nervous. And before we started recording, I'm like, how can you be nervous? You get up in front of the church and we have, 1,000 people or so in there, and you're fine. So, and right now it's just us in a room. So, yeah.
I don't know, man. I don't know.
Just a little side story. But Mike and I were in Guatemala with Bruce Chester and Bruce Fraley, and Mike was part of the pastoral. I was just there as a sidekick, but him and Bruce were doing pastoral training, and Mike's like, man, I just feel nervous standing in front of these 50 guys. I'm like, Mike, are you kidding me? He does it incredibly. So anyway,
Was he on the trip when you made the statement to Bruce Chester made you the men's ministry?
Yeah, for sure.
Our men's ministry really sucks. We got to do something about it. Well, why don't you do something?
Yeah, there's a lot of other stories that come out of that trip, but we won't go there right now.
Day,
right?
Yeah.
Well, as we get started, if you could just tell us, about how you where you grew up, how you grew up, what that was like for you.
Yeah, homegrown, right here, kind of like Foster. Grew up in Hendersonville and Gallatin. Early part of my life, my dad was a civil engineer, and he worked for Texaco when I was born. And we moved to New Orleans and Miami and Atlanta, Columbia, South Carolina, Cookeville, Tennessee, and then back here all before I was in second grade. So from second through sixth grade, I went to Nannyberry Elementary, and then spent a couple of years at Montgomery Bell Academy, MBA. Hated it. There were no girls there. And
so for those that are listening that don't know, the movie Dead Poets Society was based on stuff from Montgomery Bell Academy.
Yeah.
Which is kind of, I always thought it was from the Northeast because that's what it looks like in the movie. But that was from Montgomery Bell Academy right here in Nashville.
Yeah, and so I didn't last long there, and graduated from Good Pasture, and I have two younger sisters. My mom stayed at home for our younger years, and then as we got a little bit older and able to stay at home on her own, she went to work for small business administration with the federal government down in Nashville. So we've grown up here. We've part of this community for a long time and love it.
Yeah, so my oldest two children went to Nannyberry, where you went,
Awesome.
And now my youngest two are at your biggest rival for Good Pasture. They're at Davison Academy.
Oh,
so
yeah.
Davison Academy and Good Pasture are right down the road from each other, so they've always been big rivals as long as both schools have been in existence together. So,
yeah, back in the day, it was actually Goodlettsville High School and Lipscomb were our two big rivals. DA wasn't around then, so
yeah,
but
so
yeah.
So you talked about your parents. So I guess your parents, they stayed together and everything. You grew up in an intact home.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
That is so huge. What kind of impact did that have on you? Being able to have a mom and dad that were both in the home.
It was great. We were in church all the time. We did family vacations together. We actually the house on Cage's Bend. For those of you who live in this area, very first house when you turn onto Cage's Bend, first house on the left. My mom and dad built that house, and we grew up there on 4 acres. And just my dad bought this. It's called a travel-all. If you know what a travel-all is, it's a precursor to an SUV, I guess, but it did not have four-wheel drive. But I treated it like when I'd get, when I was 12 or 13 years old, driving around, being crazy. You know about those kind of things,
I
don't
do.
you? Yeah.
What about? Yeah, I do. Was Young's nursery there?
Yeah,
back then?
I was
Okay.
good friends
Mr.
with
Young.
Mason Young.
Yeah, okay.
Absolutely.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
So that whole area looks nothing like it did when you were growing up.
No.
This for anybody that knows, the Middle Tennessee area is just absolutely booming. Anything that used to just be open land is now gone, it seems like. And it's housing developments or apartment complexes or shopping centers, there's different stuff going in.
Brother, I grew up in this town, and I get lost going to the streets of Indian Lake. I'm like, which direction do I go to get to McAllister's? Yeah,
it is so different. And, like we've talked, I've been a police officer for over 25 years now, and the first 10 and a half years was in Hendersonville, and just trying to remember what it looked like back then, because it looks nothing like it does now. No. And, the Indian Lake Boulevard did not exist.
Right.
And I'm sure you probably did this, jumping the railroad tracks.
Oh, yeah.
On Calendar Lane. Foster probably did that too. Aaron might have also. That was kind of the thing to do. You could jump the railroad tracks there and pretend like you're Bo and Luke Duke. What were your siblings? Are you the oldest?
I'm the oldest, two younger sisters.
Are they still in this area?
My baby sister lives within walking distance of the church campus, and our middle sister lives in Franklin.
Okay, so you still have a good relationship with them and everything?
Absolutely.
That's great.
Yeah.
What were you involved in growing up? Any sports, clubs, church?
Yep. Played football in high school. Wasn't very good, but I was also a skinny kid and got killed every time I touched the football as a running back. And it was fun, though, hanging with those guys, but also played I played keyboards in a rock band in high school and college, and don't let on about that too much. But
Well, I'm ready to hear you play keyboard.
no, sir. I love music, and it was a fun time. But I thought that was going to be my career, and my dad wisely said, "Boy, you better find something to fall back on." And
You took his advice on that.
Is it bad when you said you play keyboard? I picture the show Friends and Ross Geller playing the keyboard in the early '80s and everything. That's what I picture when you said you play
that's
keyboard
pretty
in a
much
band.
it. Yes, sir.
Did you have a flock of seagulls haircut?
Yes. Yes. Thank you, Jeff.
You can tell him to shut up anytime you want to.
Hey, you never know where we're going to go. We go down
Right.
different. There's a reason it's called the path. We go down a lot of different paths on this podcast.
Rabbit trails.
Oh my goodness.
So you said you played football. Did that have an impact on? I feel like sports really usually has a positive impact on your life. Teaches you to work with others, to listen to authority and everything. Did you find that by playing sports and having an impact on you as an adult?
Yeah, it did. I think I didn't appreciate it at the time. I hated practice, man. It's like a lot of guys. You hate to practice, love to be on the field on Friday night. But yeah, it was just the summer camps and the 2-a-days and all of that, and just learning about all the hard work that it took to play a sport, and then just being connected with other guys, and that the community of a team, being around and encouraging each other. I think those were some of the big life lessons.
It's you hate it when you're going through it.
Yep.
But especially football, for most people, when you graduate from high or your senior year and that season ends, that's it. Basketball, baseball players, they can go play in softball leagues. Basketball players, you got rec basketball. For the most part, though, football is over as soon as that last game your senior year of high school, and it's a hard stop.
Yep.
And the stuff you hated, you end up missing.
Yeah. Yeah, you're exactly right. Yeah.
I found that with different things throughout life. You leave something, and it's like, man, I did not realize how good of time I was having when I was in that moment. I think there's that saying, I think it's from The Office, like, I wish we knew we were in the best of times when we were in the best of times.
Yeah.
It's so true, though. It's like, I've mentioned 2 goofy shows already, but, that saying right there is so true, though. I wish I knew I was in the good old days while they were going on. and we just don't typically realize that.
No, you're exactly right. And I'm so appreciative of not only the guys that I was with, had great godly men who were coaches, and their influence. They were hard. The only time that I ever got, this was back in the day when you got paddled in school. Never got paddled in all of my life in school except for playing football, and I messed up a play. The coach had told us, you got to know your playbook by this date, and if you don't, if you mess up a play, you get licks with the paddle. And that was the one and only time. And man,
I don't think they can do that anymore.
probably not, but man, that stung, and I remembered my plays after that.
I remember getting in trouble and going to the principal's office, and he held up 2 different paddles and told me to pick which one I would get licks with the next time I came. And that was in elementary school, and I was scared to death. I'm like, I don't want to get licks. No. But used to, you could take licks instead of a detention too.
Right.
And I'm going to take the licks anytime. Exactly. I don't want to sit in detention. When did you make the decision to accept Christ?
I was 9 years old in VBS. Hearing of my need for Jesus, that even at that early age, that I was a sinner, and I just remember being so grieved at my sin, and just hating that I had that over me, and wanting to be washed, and just hearing that Jesus had paid that price. And of course, as a 9-year-old, don't fully understand that, but. Yeah, it was just an incredible experience growing up in that church.
And this is something I've asked the other men on here, especially those that accepted Christ at an early age. As you grew older, teenage years, early 20s, did you ever have any doubts about your salvation? And, being 9 years old, did I really do it then? And did that ever come across?
Okay, so brother, this is where it's going to go down a long path. Right
okay,
here.
That's great.
Okay, so... this all ties into calling and my whole faith journey and everything.
Well, that's great, because I was also going to ask when you were called into the ministry, so this can all go into that.
Perfect. I believe that early on the Lord was calling me into ministry. I was very involved in church. Even as a young boy, I loved, kind of like when you bring Bo here, I was like a Bo. I involved in everything that I could be involved in, and as I got old enough to be a camp counselor, I was really involved in that. I wanted to. At first, I went as a student and just loved going to camp. And this camp was they would do like 6 weeks of camp. Your age group would go 1 week, and then another age group would go another group. So I did that as a kid, and then when I got old enough to be a counselor, I was like, that's what I want to do, and I loved it. And that's where I really started having experience teaching younger kids the Bible and trying to equip them and mentor them, and loved it. And this is where the story gets a little bit hard. There were older guys that I really looked up to, and they, great guys, really did a lot at the camp. But at the end of that 6 weeks, when I was one of the junior counselors, they broke out alcohol at the end of the camp, and that really shattered my whole small world of what my faith was and what church was supposed to be. And my reaction was, if this is what it's about, and this is, these guys that I thought were doing this, we're walking in God's will, and now they're doing this, and I might as well just have fun myself and not worry about it.
How old are you when this is happening?
So I would have been probably right around, old enough to drive, so right at 16.
So very impressionable, especially by older guys that you're looking up to.
Yep. So that sent me really turning my back away from the Lord. from church, just down a opposite direction, without going into a lot of detail. It was not there. I think the Bible talks about the years that the locust ate, and those were really years that I regret. But there was. It's interesting. I had a conversation with a counselor, actually a counselor through the Bab Center, years ago, as I was coming through the other side of this. And this counselor asked me, all these years that you were away from the Lord, did you feel this stabbing or this pain or this, conviction? I don't think she used the word conviction, but I'm like, yeah, all the time. And she said, I really feel like that was the Lord, the Holy Spirit drawing you, calling you back. And he was, and it took a while. And it took a really a major life event. When I graduated from college, went to Tennessee Tech, and I had earned a bachelor's degree in journalism. Thought I was going to be a radio DJ. Yep. Thought I was going to be. I was served on the college radio station WTTU, Rock Flight 2400.
That is a great radio voice.
And I said I would never work for a newspaper. I never would sit behind a desk and work for a newspaper, and you never tell God never, because he'll just laugh, right? And that's what I wound up doing, because when I graduated college, I spent a few weeks working for a country radio station out of Carthage, Tennessee, and I did Sunday mornings DJing, and the rest of the week I was sent out to sell ads, and I couldn't do either one. And so I somehow snagged a job at the Gallatin News Examiner. I'm sure you remember that.
Oh, yeah.
You guys remember the News Examiner's no longer around here. Bob Atkins, who is a member here now, he was the publisher of not only that, but the Star News and a lot of other publications. But he hired me and worked there for years. That's where I met my first wife. We were married for 4 years, had a son. One day, she came to me and said, I don't love you, and I don't think I ever have, and I want a divorce. And from that point forward, I was devastated, and I didn't know where to turn. And at that point, I was working, actually working for. I'd left the newspaper and done some work in public relations, and then I wound up working for United Way of Sumner County. And my boss at the time, probably maybe all three of you guys know Karen Mitchell, who's a solid member here. Karen was my boss, and she knew what was going on. And, I had been obviously out of church when my first wife and I were married. We had gotten into church, a small church in Gallatin. It was a Baptist church there. But when the divorce happened, Karen said, we've got this great counseling ministry. You should go there. And that's where the counselor said to me, you should be in church, whether it's here or somewhere else. You really need to be in church. And I thought, well, I'm being counseled here. I'll come here. My great uncle, Bobby Jenkins, was one of my mentors growing up, and he was actually a longtime member of Inglewood Baptist when they were living in Inglewood, and they moved to Gallatin, and so he started attending here. And so I thought, well, my Uncle Bobby's here. That sounds like a good place to come. And so I was here, started getting back into the Word, reading the Word, devouring the Word, really. And I'll never forget, I was driving, I had a little Mazda pickup truck. I was driving the streets of Gallatin for work, and every time I'd come to a stoplight, I'd open up my Bible and I would read something. I believe I was in Matthew at this point, and I was reading something from Jesus' words, and I can't tell you exactly what that was, but I remember vividly at this point, I was at my lowest time, and I cried out audibly. I said, Jesus, I can't take this anymore. You're going to have to take this from me. And at that very moment, it was as if he was sitting right next to me. It was a bench seat, and it was like he was sitting right next to me, and it was as if he was saying to me, Mike, I've been waiting for a long time for you to say that. Here you go. And it was almost like I could physically feel like tons of weight being lifted off my shoulders, and it kind of took my breath. I'm like, wow. And my response was, Jesus, I'm sorry. And whatever you would have me to do, I'll do. And from that point forward, I think that's where I told Foster earlier today as we were talking about getting together for this podcast. And I said, I've reflected on that moment. It's really a Jonah moment, I guess, where early on I feel like the Lord was calling me into ministry, and I ran the other direction, just as Jonah did when God told him to go to Nineveh. And it took Jonah being thrown off a ship and into the belly of a fish to realize that he needed to surrender to God's will.
Yeah.
And from that point forward, the Lord led me to where I am now. There's a lot of in between, and I don't know if we got enough time, but it's probably a lot.
Our best.
Yeah.
How old were you? Of course, you mentioned that your first wife, she left and everything. How old were you when all this was going on?
Oh goodness. So this would, right, early 30s.
Okay.
Yeah. Early 30s. And yeah. So I was a single dad for like 4 years, and I became really involved here at the church.
So and if you don't want to answer some of this stuff, because as you know, I went through a divorce also. When you went through that, there's so many emotions that you go through because your whole world is just being flipped upside down. And nobody gets married thinking they're going to get divorced.
Exactly.
So when that happened and going to now, because you do have a son with your ex-wife. Mm-hmm. So, and I hear people say, oh, well, when the kid's 18, I don't have to deal with them anymore, which is so not true. Both of my oldest two are both adults now. The relationship with my ex-wife is better. I mean, I'm not talking to her every day, but if we need something, we can talk to each other and get along okay. How is that? How did you see that, and how did that develop for you?
It was, for me, it was a process of forgiveness. I had to wrestle with, my own responsibility in the marriage, and then I had to, it was really hard those years when our son, and I know guys who are listening to this have had to go through, the exchanging kids.
Yeah. How old was your son?
So he was like 4 or 5 years old.
So that's the same age my son Joshua was when his mom and I got divorced, and then Emily was about 2. And it definitely has an impact on the children.
Yeah, it does. But we were able to work through that. We, I guess, if there's any good way to co-parent, I feel like we did that. We communicated well, and we watched out for Cody's best interest.
That's good.
Yeah,
that's really hard to do too.
Yeah,
because it is an emotional time, and you have, a lot of times people say, "Oh, with time comes healing," but that's so true. Also, it takes some time. It takes moving on. and of course you're married now to Jennifer,
Yeah.
and y'all have been married for quite some time. And I'm sure that helped with that healing process also.
Yeah, and I want to be an encouragement to guys who maybe have been through a divorce or who are single who are listening to this. And, one of the things that God taught me through this is, I think early on, I felt like, I can't stand to be alone. I got to have somebody in my life. And the Lord kept showing me over and over again, no, you don't. No, you don't. You need me. You need to focus on me. For 4 years. And I actually said out loud to him, again, to this statement, Lord, I now realize I am totally
Dependent.
I have dependent on you, and everything I have, everything that I need, I have in you. And if Lord, you say that I'm to never be married again, I am totally okay with that because of Jesus. And again, it was like he said, okay, you're learning more in this process. And it wasn't immediate, but to me, it seemed like if you take the timeline and it's like, wow, after that realization, then the Lord brought Jennifer into my life. And at that point, I felt like that there was the healing process coming off the divorce, drawing closer to Jesus in those 4 years, and the Lord really preparing me to be the godly husband that I needed to be for the godly wife that Jennifer deserved, And cool thing is, 21 years ago tomorrow at the Freedom Fest is when I proposed to her.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
So it's way cool.
That is cool.
Yeah. I think this is important for people to hear. And on one of our episodes coming up, I'm going to talk about some of my stuff I went through. But I feel like people that don't go to church or didn't grow up in church, they sometimes look at it and they'll think, oh, we have these perfect lives. And we do not by any means. Like, you've gone through a divorce and all that. I remember Richard Gaya, when I went through mine, he reached out to me because he'd gone through a divorce also. And, used to it was kind of unheard of to have staff members at the church that had been divorced.
Yep.
And that's not the case. And there is so much that you can learn from these people that have gone through it because we've been there. We've been in those shoes. And a lot of the emotions that other guys are feeling, or, women too, that are feeling when they're going through this, we've had those same emotions and we've come through it. And I think it's important for people to realize that anything you're going through, there's somebody that's in the church that's probably gone through that same thing and come through the other side.
Absolutely. And that's something else that the counselor through the BAP Center shared with me was a passage that I've really leaned upon for the last 30 years or so is it's out of 2 Corinthians chapter 1, verses 3 through 5. And I can just kind of paraphrase it in my own words is, praise be to God, the Father, our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, the God of all comfort, who comforts us in our time of distress, so that we may be comfort to others. And she told me, she said, you don't understand right now when you're going through what you're going through, but God's going to use you to help other people.
It's so true.
Well, that's a reminder. If we're not careful as church people, we'll put specific, parameters on leadership. And I'm not going to go down this rabbit hole because I don't really know exactly what I'm talking about, but your counselor told you the Lord's going to use you because of that experience you came through. Now, being in a church, being through a singles class, you've had the opportunity to minister to other people because you've walked through a divorce yourself. And so I just think about how short are we selling ourselves by putting a limitation on what we should allow to be in leadership in our church. I just think if we had said, no, Mike McClanahan can't be an employee here because he's been divorced, I think about what would our mission department look like? What would the impact that you've had on, just me and my family in missions, but hundreds of people. And so I'm just grateful we don't do that. I do want to ask you one more question before we get too far down the road, because you mentioned this earlier. This is back to your camp leadership days.
Yeah.
Before you got put in the belly of the whale, I'll say. The men at the camp that were leaders broke a bottle of whiskey or something out.
Yeah.
And I think the point that we need to understand as Christian men, that when we're in a leadership position, we need to be the examples for others, right? And it's not a legalistic thing. It's because we have chosen or have been chosen. We have chosen to walk in relationship with the Lord, and because of that, we don't want to partake in some of that stuff.
That's right.
Not that we're going to condemn somebody that is being sanctified and kind of learning things, but when you choose to be in a leadership role, I hope that people will be steadfast in their walk with the Lord, be consistent in God's word, because when you do that, you don't have the desire to do those things. So anyway, I wanted to make the point that as every one of us in this room and many listeners are Christian men leaders, and you don't show up at a bar if you're in a leadership Christian position.
Yeah.
Because you're causing somebody else. They caused you to stumble that day.
Yeah.
And so, I don't know.
Yeah, and let me just kind of clarify that a little bit. It wasn't the men leader. It was actually the young adult guys, the guys that were a few years older than me.
Okay.
And that's one of the reasons that when I try to speak into the lives of young men that God places in my path through this ministry, is to say that you're an influencer, and the guys that are younger than you are watching you. So you need to always lead an exemplary life, because what you do could turn someone away from the Lord, intentionally or not. And, and I also want to go back and say, I mean, nothing at all against the camp or the church. I mean, just phenomenal leaders. And I don't know where those guys are today. I pray that they're with the Lord, walking with the Lord. And, but all of that to say, he used those experiences, everything, all of us guys, I think, I would hope that if you're hearing this, that you would be encouraged that every circumstance and everything that happens in your life, God is sovereign over. Okay. Sure. And he uses everything. You look at the story of Joseph, every piece of our lives, the Lord takes those and he weaves a tapestry together, and we can't see it right now. And I hope that, I don't know that I could just visualize when my life is over and I get to be with Jesus in heaven, that the Lord says, here's this tapestry of your life, and look at all of the different directions. I was with you all along the way. Look at the people that I put in your path. I don't know, the people, the names that I mentioned in this story so far. I mean, that's just blows my mind that, there are people that I still work with in the church now that God put in my path years ago. And they were all, one of the questions I know you ask is like, who mentored you? And I mentioned my great uncle. Another one is Johnny Godwin. Johnny Godwin. You guys know Johnny. If you don't, man, you need to know him. Such a godly man, former pastor, former editor. And I got to know him when I was, this is a whole nother story. Editor of the Hendersonville Star News. Was that when I met you? I don't remember.
It might be. When I was working for Hendersonville, I think so.
Because you were a canine officer.
I was.
Yeah. Did I write a bad story about you or something?
No. I remember
Probably should have.
I know Tina Lee, who goes to church here also.
Yeah.
She wrote a story about me, and you might have also. I can't remember.
Yeah. I'm sorry if I did.
Don't be.
I'm sure it was a great story. It was probably amazing.
I covered a lot of police and courts and Judge Gay too, and all of those.
Well,
guys.
back then he would have been he would have been assistant district attorney.
Assistant DA, that's right.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, guys like Johnny Godwin, he wrote a column. Funny story. I don't know how we're doing on time, guys, but this is a funny story I got to share. All right, and how God laughs at this whole tapestry journey. Okay, so when I was editor of the Star News. This was before my divorce. This was still, in my wandering years. I came back from a staff meeting at the News Examiner. That was our parent newspaper because it published 3 days a week and Star News just 2 days. So I came back to the office on a Friday. And I walked in the door at the Star News office, and one of the ladies in the office said, "You've got a message to contact Dr. Weekly at First Baptist Hendersonville." I'm like, "Oh, okay." And so I called up First Baptist Hendersonville, main church number, and I don't know if you guys know Mel Timberlake, Ron and Mel Timberlake.
Yes.
Mel Timberlake was Brother Glenn, Dr. Weekly's administrative assistant. And I said, "Hello, this is Mike McClanahan, editor of the Hendersonville Star News. I've got a message to call Dr. Weekly." And she's like, "One moment, please." And I thought, what's going on here? And Brother Glenn gets on the phone and chewed my butt. And I'm like, what? So what had happened, back in the days, I don't know how many people remember newspapers, but you used to have letters to the editor, and you pretty well let people say what they want to say, within reason. And somebody wrote a letter criticizing First Baptist for having the power team here. You guys remember the power team?
Yeah, I remember. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Up there tearing up some phone books.
Yeah, exactly. So this guy criticizes, says, anyway, just, said he didn't like the idea of First Baptist hosting the power team. And Brother Glenn was none too happy about that. And he was like, "You're going to run a front page correction on this." And blah, blah, blah. And I said, "Well, no, sir, we're not." It wasn't a front page article. It was a letter to the editor, and you're welcome to write a letter to the editor as well if you'd like. He said, "I'm not going to help you sell your papers." And I'm like,
That's awesome.
So fast forward, now I'm serving in ministry at this point. Richard Gay has invited me he's asked me to come on staff part-time as the singles minister, and I'm sensing a calling to full-time ministry, and I asked to meet with Brother Glenn, I said, "Brother Glenn, what does a calling look like?" And he said, "Well, Brother Mike, I guess the best way I would define a calling is, if God opens a door for you that you walk through it." And I'm like, "Well, okay, he's opening this door for me to full-time ministry." And he said, "Well, okay, well, good." And if you'd ever been around Brother Glenn, he'd spin his ring when your time was up, and so he started spinning the ring. I'm like, "Okay, well," so I said, "Brother Glenn, there's one last thing." And he said, "Yeah, Brother Mike." I said, "I don't know if you know this, but do you remember that I used to work for the newspaper and I was the editor back in the day?" And he's like, "Yeah." And he just laughed, and that was all that was said.
Oh, that's
And
great.
so I wound up, Brother Glenn was my first pastor that I worked under. And how cool is that? And I'm just amazed every day when I walk on this campus and that the Lord allows me to do what I get to do. I'm just blown away. Messed up dude that I've been, and I'm still a major work in progress. But, yeah. I don't know, Jeff Foster. I've probably gone down.
No,
the
you're
road
doing. I love this because I'm learning things, that I had no clue about. But you do this, and you come on as singles minister. Had you gone to seminary at this point?
No, actually, I had not. I was working full-time on the United Way of Sumner County staff and working about 10 to 15 hours. You know how that goes, Foster?
I do.
No.
Have you ever only worked 10 to 15 hours in a week here?
No.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
But it is a labor of love. We were passionate about doing that, and so no, I had not, and I was doing that part time, and I really felt called to full time vocational ministry, and there was an opportunity. They actually allowed me to take a secondary role, which was men's minister. So I did men's ministry and singles ministry. I don't know how you combine those two, but I did it for a few years, and it was great. But nothing like what Foster and you, Jeff, being on the men's ministry team. Aaron, you guys are you've taken it to an astronomically different level than what it was then. There was some good things when I started doing men's ministry. There was already it was called Men's Network, and there were some phenomenal guys that were doing that Wednesday night men's gathering and the wild game dinner and the men's camp out and all of those things. Men's fraternity.
We've talked about the wild game dinner and some of the meetings we've had, and just the memories of that and how good of a time that was.
Yeah.
So when you did go to the seminary, did you leave to go, or were you able to do that like through an online type program? Or
that was the only way, was through online. Yeah. Okay. Well, it was online, and I went to Southern Baptist Theological Seminary, Southern Seminary, and they had an extension campus at the Lifeway headquarters in Nashville. Okay. So I was able to go down there and do that in the evenings, do some online classes, and then had to do some classes on campus.
Is that the one in Louisville?
Yeah.
Okay,
Louisville.
So at least not too far away.
Not too far. No.
That's good.
Yeah.
And that's such a great thing to being able to do online now, because however many years ago that wasn't even an option. You would have had to pack up and
that's right.
Move your family. Hope you can find some work to do while you're in school and everything. But that's great. So when you're called into ministry, you start off as singles minister, and men's minister. What did you think you were being called to do as a minister? Well,
I originally thought my degree was a Master of Divinity in Christian education. So I thought I would be kind of like what Ben Baxley is now, minister to adults. Okay. And that, but I'd always, I'd been doing short-term mission trips and leading teams through men's ministry and singles ministry and doing that. And, in my very first seminary class was Intro to Missions. And so I don't know why I never did change my route, but it's another long story how I wound up doing missions, but just a cool.
Yeah, cool. You hear people being called to ministry, and most people, their immediate thought is called to be a pastor. Yeah. Where you are a pastor, but called to be the senior pastor, the one up there every Sunday and delivering the sermon. But there are so many different avenues as ministers. You got music, you got youth. Of course, you're doing missions, singles, so many different things. Foster is a men's minister. And I think that's important for people to know. If they are feeling called, they need to really kind of search that, pray about it, read the Bible to figure out what they're being called to. And God's liable to change it too. You never know. You get in somewhere and find where God can use you. And, like right now, you're a minister to missions, where you've been in different roles since you've been here.
Well, and I think that's something that I would also encourage men listening to this is, man, do not keep a tight grip on your life. Keep your hands wide open to Jesus and say, whatever you would have me to do, I'll do.
We have a hard time with change.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Especially
we talk about in the police world. We hate the way things are, and we hate change. So it's
Yeah, for sure.
So you said you proposed 21 years ago tomorrow.
Yeah, at the Freedom Festival.
How did y'all meet?
I was teaching a singles class. I was single at the time, and I had a rule that I was not going to date anybody in my class. And Jennifer walked in the door. Actually, Karen Mitchell, my boss at the time, brought her into the classroom. As the class had already started, she sat down. You know, we did all the pleasantries. Oh, welcome to the class and all that. And we were doing. This was back when our church did Room in the Inn ministry, and singles did the night of Room in the Inn. And Jennifer came, and she served. And I mean, obviously she's a beautiful woman. So I noticed her right away when she came in the class. But you know, I had that rule.
Was there like a big bright light around her face?
Yeah, like, pretty much.
Yeah.
But I'm like, hold back. And so when we had the Room in the Inn, and I watched her love on these men, and I watched her serve, and that's where I fell in love with her. And then she disappeared. She didn't come back, and I'm like, what's up? Well, I found out she was a flight attendant, and she would leave for work every 3 days. And I'm like, oh, wow, this is really cool. I love to travel. So I call her up. I leave this really awkward voicemail message, and she saved it for a long time. This is back when we had the voice machines and all that. And her mom was like, no, he's after all the women. You just need to run from him. And so I'm glad she didn't. But yeah, we started dating in January. She's going to kill me if I forget this, but it was
Hey, you
January.
remember the anniversary of the proposal?
Yes.
That's much better than I can do.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it was the fireworks. That was the thing, but literally and figuratively. But it was pretty quick engagement. We got engaged obviously on July 3rd, and then we got married in October.
So you're about to have your 21st anniversary,
That's
too.
right. That's right.
Makes
Yeah.
it a lot easier to keep up with those numbers if you don't keep it too far
Exactly.
apart.
Yeah.
So did she have any children?
She did not.
Okay.
And so for a long time, we had talked about adopting. We were looking at adopting internationally, and we were moving in that direction. And we went to it was called Christian Alliance for Orphans, CAFO Summit at Brentwood Baptist. And at that conference, we heard about the need for kids in foster care, especially in Tennessee. Right now, there's, I think, almost 9,000 kids in foster care in the state of Tennessee, and 5,000 foster families, but a lot of those are not active. They don't accept kids for whatever reason. So we hear this need, and then we also hear that there's a huge need for sibling groups. So if there's siblings that are in foster care, it's harder to get them placed into a home together. Usually they're split up. And we're wanting to adopt, ultimately. And then the other strike that kids, they have many strikes against them in foster care, but is that if they're older, most families want babies. If they're thinking to adopt, they want to adopt a baby. So again, this was a matter of, okay, Jesus, whatever you would have us to do, we'll do. And if you would have us to adopt a sibling group, or if it's older kids, okay, we'll make it happen. Or you'll make it happen.
And that's something, following you on social media, I had noticed that at the time. Like, I'd see the pictures when you went through with the adoption, and usually at the courthouse or something.
Yeah.
And that y'all adopted older children.
Yeah. I may not get the ages exactly right if I stopped and did the math, but we adopted a sibling group of 4. We were actually in Paris, France, not Tennessee.
Okay, I was in Paris, Tennessee a week ago. So,
well, my wife's a flight attendant, and I actually got to go on one of her trips with her. So it was 24 hours in Paris, and we're walking around in a park, and our caseworker calls and says, "We have a sibling group of 4. Would you consider this?" And we sat in this park in Paris and prayed, and we said yes. So that would have been let's see, 10 years ago. Yeah, right at 10 years ago, because we moved them into our home on my 50th birthday. I'm 60, I'll be 61. And so it's going on 11 years, I guess. Yeah. So yeah, it was a sibling group of 4, the 2 girls, 9 and 10. Haley's the youngest, then Lexi. Jordan, I think was 13 or 14, and then Tyler, 14 or 15 at the time. Yeah. And then we had our son Cody that was, he had moved off to college at that time. So,
And your one daughter is now driving the ice cream truck for the church.
That's right.
She came up to my office doing ice cream not long ago.
Yeah.
It's great seeing them, and we talked about stuff, you go through things you don't want to go through.
Right.
You went through a divorce. You definitely didn't want to go through that. And now you've seen that. And one of the things you definitely did not want to go through was the loss of a child. And I remember this. I remember when this happened because it happened just outside Gallatin city limits, and there was a car crash and you lost your son.
Yeah.
And that's, parents don't want to, we don't want to lose children, of course. And that is such a tragic event to go through, causes such devastation on a family. And there's a lot of families that go through something like that and they don't survive it. The marriage either doesn't survive it, the other siblings don't, where they go off. And the tragedy of that, I'm sure still has huge ripples for you, and the emotions come up when you least expect it. If you could just talk to us about that and going through this.
That day was horrific. Jennifer had gone to work. She had a flight to London. But before she left, Jordan he was a month shy of his 19th birthday. He was 18. He moved out the minute he turned 18. He was ready to hit the road. Yeah. Last time I saw Jordan, he was at our house and actually had a conversation with him. I've had the privilege of baptizing 4 of our 6 kids, and Jordan was one of them. And and Jordan was kind of like me. He was really involved in the church and served really well. Had some great godly men pouring into him. Mike Stark is one of those guys that really stands out to me that loved on Jordan and George Connors and some of those guys. But he had a period where he wandered away like I did, got a little wild and crazy. But he came to the house one day, a few weeks before the accident, and I said, Jordan, how's your walk? How's your relationship with Jesus? And he said, it's good. And I found out later he had met a pastor that lived close to where the wreck site was, and that pastor had conversations with him and was getting him back in church. But anyway, that day we were trying to. One of us was trying to get in touch with Jordan. Some of his friends were contacting us. Hey, have you heard from Jordan? No. Couldn't get in touch with him, and we thought, well, it's Jordan, and then it seemed like even on the news, like at 5 o'clock, we heard about a wreck, and then we started hearing rumors that Jordan had been in a wreck, and so I started calling around. I think I called several different hospitals and wound up I called Vanderbilt and started getting kind of a runaround. And never would get an answer. Nobody would ever tell me anything. And finally, I think one of the people at Vanderbilt said, well, call the Highway Patrol. Maybe they can tell you something. And I called Highway Patrol. And I remember having been a newspaper reporter and been to death scenes and been around some of the things that you guys as police officers have been around. And I knew when the guy on the other end of the Highway Patrol, he said, Mr. McClanahan, are you at home right now? And I said, yes, sir. And he said, we'll be right over. And I knew.
You knew then?
I knew right then. And and so I had to tell our daughters and our son Tyler, our son Cody, and I had to call their birth mom and tell her. And I mean, it's just devastating, shock, and just overwhelming. Could not believe it. I mean, so I guess to tell you guys and to tell the guys listening, there's no way on this earth that Jennifer and I could have made it through the other side if it had not been this church, if it had not been our relationship with Jesus and the strong marriage that the Lord gave us. But man, there's this church loved on us. I mean, within an hour, there were people in our house. And, Jennifer and I talk about this frequently. I don't know how people who don't know the Lord go through a loss or a tragedy like this. And that's just, it makes such an urgent need for us to tell people about Jesus and the importance of having a relationship with him. So it was godly people that poured into us, that loved on us, and the church that came around us and supported us. There was just no way that we could have done it apart from Jesus.
Yeah.
And
and I know he was so well liked by it. It seemed like everybody he came in contact with, and I didn't know him well. I knew who he was.
Yeah.
But he worked in Gallatin at Dairy Queen.
He did.
Dairy Queen has some great ice cream, but I would go there, and I'd seen him in there, and he just seemed like everybody liked him. All of his coworkers really he got along with them. It seemed like he was a positive person for his coworkers to be around. And that's just something that stands out to me. For me to be able to remember that he worked at Dairy Queen, that means that he stood out as, in a positive way there, and the effect that he had on the other people there.
I appreciate that.
How has this affected his siblings? And I'm sure who knows, we might have them on at some time if they want to talk about it, just to talk about that too. But what you've been able to see and how they've been able to cope with this.
It's been really hard. It's really been hard, and I don't want to speak for them. They've each dealt with it in their own way. You mentioned Haley. We've seen her faith just blossom in the last couple of years, and just an amazing way. She wrote something on Facebook last night, a poem that she wrote, and just blew me away about love and forgiveness. And
That's not the first time she's written something incredible.
yeah. Another beauty out of the ashes of all of that is at Jordan's funeral, and I got to, preach Jordan's funeral, and there were a ton of his friends there. And one of the friends was his best friend, Manuel. We did not like Manuel. Manuel and Jordan got into all kinds of trouble. In fact, I'll never forget sitting in my office one day, and I get a call from the Gallatin Police Department. Mr. McClanahan, is your son Jordan? Is he supposed to be in school? Gallatin High School? And I was like, yes, sir. So, well, he's not. You might want to come up here. And he'd been out skipping school. We'd been skipping school with Manuel. And we were like, you need to stay away from Manuel. He's bad influence.
Manuel's parents were probably telling him you need to stay away from Jordan.
Well, here's the thing. So Manuel, we invited a bunch of Jordan's friends over after the funeral, and Manuel came over, his girlfriend, and we got to know Manuel and found out that Manuel had really been orphaned as a kid. And he, his father's from Honduras and his mother's from the United States, and they both left him with his dad's brother, sister, or something, aunt and uncle. And then he got kicked out of the house when he turned 18. And we during all that process of getting to know Manuel after Jordan's passing, Manuel asked me something about, he said, well, I got baptized as a kid, but I don't really understand. I said, well, let's go talk. And I shared the gospel with Manuel, and he accepted Jesus right there in our screened-in porch, and I got to baptize him, and we actually adopted him into our family.
I think I was at the service where I remember that now that you're talking about that, because you baptized him here.
Yeah.
And I was in that service. I remember that.
Yeah, yeah. So, so we now have, when people ask us how many kids, we have 6 kids. One is
great.
with Jesus. Yeah.
So this is a question I wasn't going to ask, and we're actually going to do an episode with me here soon, and I'm going to talk about some of this, but it's kind of the time to ask it. I got some stuff that's going on with us, but I'll get into that on the next episode. And so the reason I'm asking is, so, you lose your son, and I don't think, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but you probably didn't doubt your faith.
No.
And it's not a doubt of faith, but you're going through a tragedy that you don't want to go through. Mm-hmm. And you don't want to have to be the guy that now has to use this to deliver God's message. Mm-hmm. You don't want to have to be the one that can relate to somebody else that lost a son. Being a Christian, having faith, and you're not doubting what God does and everything. How did you cope with that?
I think one of the ways that helped me cope with it was that guys like Foster and his wife Jackie, others that, George and Beth Connors, several others that, allowed us to be real. And when they asked us, how you doing? For me, I would just say, it sucks, man. It sucks. Sorry, that sounds a harsh word to say.
No,
but,
I think it.
And just to be real and say, I hate this. I mean, my kids are suffering. I'm suffering. I mean, the grief just comes over you in tidal waves when you don't expect it, and it smacks you in the face. My wife be in the grocery store and see one of our friends and, how you doing? And she'd break down in tears, but I think it's one of the beautiful things about this church is the godly people who have wrapped around us and carried us through that and allowed us to be real and not to put us up on a pedestal and stand off and say, well, as the pastor, he's got it all together and we don't need to, worry about. No, I think that was the biggest part of that.
Yeah, somebody saying, "Oh, well, it's God's plan." That doesn't help. I mean, I could see a lot of anger coming if somebody said that.
Yes,
because I don't even know how to process that statement because you want to be able to use the tragedy that you went through to bring people to Christ, but you don't want to be the one to go through that tragedy.
No, you're exactly right, Jeff, and that's the thing. I actually there were people that said that in the receiving line at Jordan's funeral, and I just bit my tongue, and
inside you're wanting to punch them right in the face,
kind of. Honestly, yeah. And then there's one of my pet peeves is people misquote 1 Corinthians 10:13, and they'll say to you, "Well, God won't give you any more than you can handle." And I'm like, really?
Yes, he does.
Yeah, he does.
He gives you more than you can handle, so you turn to him.
That's right.
What I've told
go
people.
read 2 Corinthians chapter 12. Hear what Paul has to say, that thorn in the flesh, and he cried out 3 times, Lord, take it away. And Jesus says, no, in your weakness, my power is made manifest. And that is the thing that, I'm glad you brought that up because I think that's one of the things that it's you you just don't know. Sometimes people don't know what to say or how to say it. And sometimes the best thing to do is not to say anything at all, and to be a comfort to people is to just be present.
Yeah.
And I don't. That kind of went a different direction, maybe than the question that you asked.
No, that's totally what I'm at. And also, you're the full-time minister, and you're the one that's supposed to have the answers to this stuff, and now you're going through it, and you probably can't find the answers for yourself at that time. So that's when it's important for people in this church, where you have the Bruces and other people that you can reach out to. Like I guess it was either. I don't know if it was last Wednesday or the Wednesday before, and I left church and I texted Bruce Rayleigh. I go, "Hey, you got a minute?" And he called me. And that's, and I'll talk a little bit more about that one in the next episode about the stuff going on. And that's the first time I just kind of broke down. And I did say, "Hey, I just need somebody older and wiser to talk to." And he goes, "Well, I'm older. I don't know about wiser, but he's a wise man.
He's a wise man."
And he was able to help me out a lot. But now your wife, she's not a full-time minister. She's a Christian, and she's going through this. Did it have an impact on you and your wife's relationship? Did it bring y'all closer together? Did y'all have times where you just didn't know how to process things, and you needed an outlet somewhere?
It brought us closer together, for sure. We had kind of a triple whammy when Jordan was killed in the car wreck, and it sounds kind of trivial, but I think it was within that same week we had to put one of our dogs down, and then within a matter of weeks after that, Jennifer's best friend is Amy Brees, and her husband Richard was battling cancer, and he lost that battle not long after Jordan was killed. So here's grief upon grief upon grief, and there were times where I don't see it as much now, but I think if Jennifer were sitting here, we'd say, yeah, there were some times where it was rough, and there was tension, there was some hard times, but the Lord allowed us to lean on each other. And one of the things that we said to each other is, if we got quiet or we got angry, we just weren't in the right frame of mind, we would look at each other and say, "Is it a Jordan moment?"
Yeah.
Yep. We're having a Jordan moment.
Yeah. For you, is there any person that was that one person that you were able to go to through all this?
Man.
And it might be a couple people. I don't know, but is there somebody that kind of guided you through this process of grief?
Well, Foster and Jackie were there a lot through this process, because they were very involved. They have been involved in our kids' lives.
That's great.
Probably, I would say, some of the strongest support that we got was from them. There's several others that were around here, and of course, Pastor Chesser and Pastor Rayleigh, phenomenal. Just encouraging, giving me time, understanding where I was and where Jennifer and I were in that process. There was, Dwayne McRae, that headed up our safety and security team up until a few years ago, and Dwayne and Sue had a resort cabin. I can't even remember where it was right now, but he said, "You and Jennifer just go and get away. Don't worry about anything. Y'all have this place," and those kind of things that minister to us.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of people that poured into us. So I hate to name some names, but man, there were just so many.
And sometimes, for the people listening, sometimes it's just sitting and listening.
Yeah.
Or sometimes it's just sitting and nobody saying anything, just being there. Because, most people have been through some kind of tragedy in their life. And sometimes you just don't know what to say. You just want somebody hanging out with you, drinking a cup of coffee and this being there.
David Marlin calls me up, says, "You want to go fishing?" Took me on a kayak in the Caney Fork River, and we just fished. And that was probably some of the most therapeutic ministry that David did.
I hope people can take that away from this, that, you don't have to be the counselor, you don't have to be the minister, but just being that person, hey, you want to go fish? And y'all could be sitting out on the Caney, not even talking to each other, but you have that other person there. You're able to get away from things and have time to try to process things. And, this being in nature is sometimes good. Just looking, I look at these sunsets that we're having lately, and it's amazing. Yeah. It's just, you've said so much that's going to be all this is so impactful. It just leads into everything that we're doing, that we're trying to help men with. And, we say this is a men's podcast, but the last episode that came out, I've heard from so many people of the impact that one's had on them, and not just men. And I hope this one's going to be the same way, because it is such a hard thing to go through. I want to touch back. You adopted your children. They're, older. And this, knowing what I know from the line of work I'm in, when you're adopting older children, usually they have seen a lot of stuff that they should not have seen, and been through a lot of experience that they should not have been through. And then they go through something like this. How, as parents, do y'all handle that? Because they're probably, they are mature beyond their years because of the experiences they've had. So,
your question is, how did we, when we first adopted them? And
you adopt them, they're coming into your home, and, I think some were teenagers, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And bringing them and their experiences into your home and trying to love them like Christ wants you to love your children.
Yeah. Ready-made personalities, habits, all of that. Man, it was hard. Really, really, really hard. Hardest thing we'll ever love. And when we talk to parents that are, couples that are thinking about fostering or adopting, we say, especially those who are going through fostering, it's going to be hard. There's baggage, there's rough stuff that, if a child is in foster care, there's been something that's happened negatively in their life. And, you have to go into that. No training, no amount of preparation on the front end can really get you ready for what you encounter. And it draws you closer to the Lord, and it draws you closer to, hopefully, to your spouse. It did for me and Jennifer. We did a lot of things wrong, and we had to do a lot of apologizing to our kids, humbling as it was. But yeah, it was rough, but it was also fun, and it was exciting.
That's great. I'm going to ask you this one more thing. We're probably going to close it out.
Okay.
You mentioned Bobby Jenkins being a mentor to you, and the impact that had. Have you mentored anybody? And if so, what kind of impact did that have on you?
Yeah, I've mentored several guys. There's one guy, we probably spent 3 years in a formal mentor relationship.
I've talked about this I keep saying mentor. I got to find some other way to make it not so formal, because, sometimes mentoring's not doing that set meeting and talking to people. It's in other ways. So.
Well, and for me, the set meeting was, man, we're going to go have breakfast at Cafe 393 or Mary's Place in Gallatin. And we just sit down and we'd open up God's Word, and we'd just read through it and say, okay, what's the Lord saying right here? And then I think one of the things that I've tried to do is in those mentoring type relationship with guys is on the front end to say, look, if we're going to get together and we're going to encourage each other in our walk with the Lord, are you willing to be real with me? And are you willing for me to speak hard truth into your life. And if I see something that I need to point out, are you going to receive that?
So it's almost like it's double edged. Like they're helping you're helping each other. Really,
Exactly.
Yeah, it's funny. Like, because you said you're 60 now.
Yep.
Which is a lot younger than what it used to be to me. Yeah, I'm 47
I
years
still
old.
think of you as 20,
Yeah.
Jeff. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm the old guy at work now. We have these guys that graduated high school with my son that are being hired as police officers. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it just makes me feel so old. But it's the class I teach at the men's class I teach at 7:30 on Sunday mornings. I love it because I got a wide age range in there, and we can all learn so much from each other. Sometimes we have a 14-year-old come into our class because his grandmother is going to Vicki Llewellyn's class, so he comes with her and he'll come up to ours because he knows me, and it's just we get to hear things from him that we don't even think about now. And then, I have some guys a little bit older than me. I have guys in their 20 age range in there. And we're all in these different stages of life, but we can help each other so much by this given perspective on things and looking at things in a different way.
Absolutely. And I love that younger energy and enthusiasm. That's some of the guys that I get to mentoring, work with. It's through, working with Bo Griswold, our college pastor, and he hands me off guys that are being called into mission work. And some of these guys, man, all of them they're on fire for Jesus and ready to do whatever it takes. And I'm like, man, I'm energized by the energy of these young guys. And I think that's an encouragement to us older guys.
It is.
Well, me, older guy, you're not there yet, but
I feel like a lot of times I feel like it. I do want to. You've given a couple different passages in the Bible. Do you have a favorite passage, or is one of them that you've already given us your favorite passage?
There's a lot of favorites. It was funny. Last night I went to the Gallatin City Council meeting just because. I don't know why. Just because I was bored. It was my last day of vacation.
You had to be really bored.
Hey, I'm a former newspaper reporter. I get off on all of that kind of stuff. I don't know, but so I go there and I wore my black unashamed T-shirt that we.
You wear when everybody gets baptized gets the unashamed T-shirt.
Yeah. And so I wore it, and after it was a really short meeting. Thank the Lord. 22 minutes. I think that was a record. One of the department heads, female department heads, came up to me and she said, "I'm just curious, what's your shirt about? What does that mean?" And I said, "Well, I'm glad you asked. That's from Romans 1:16. For I am not ashamed of the gospel, for it is God's power unto salvation for everyone who believes, for the Jew first and also the Gentile." And she was like, "Oh, okay." And she walked off. I didn't get a chance to have a further conversation. But that passage to remind me, and when I put that shirt on, I'm not ashamed, and I shouldn't be at any day of the week. And I think that's one of those passages that the Lord brings to my mind frequently. Are you ashamed? Are you going to speak the truth about who I am?
Yeah, it's great. You wear that, and just wearing that shirt opened a door for you to share something where you could have just been like, "Oh, it's just a shirt I have." And who knows what that did for her?
Yeah.
She probably came up to you thinking you're some kind of like action thing, trying to get something, something not being built in Gallatin or something being built in Gallatin or something. But that's so great. And, we have other people in our church that work in City Hall there, like JR, who does a lot with Celebrate Recovery here. I actually had a meeting with him at 2:00 today, and we were talking about stuff with the church and everything. Yeah. So, that's great. Who knows, maybe that will open her to, she might already be a Christian. She might be involved in a church somewhere, but if she's not, hopefully that will just plant that for her.
Yeah,
that's great.
And let me just say that's not to brag, because I'm definitely that's not all the time, man. And so to encourage your listeners that, man, there are days where I don't speak up and I don't I'm just like everybody else,
right? you're the minister, but you're just like everybody else.
Absolutely.
And the missions minister
Yeah.
at that,
Yeah.
But it's, it's so fun. It's just hard to do sometimes. And,
Yeah.
we have moments of our self-doubt of being able to share.
Absolutely.
And it makes it, that's why I like this platform. It's easy to share on here.
Yeah.
And it reaches a lot of people. I want to thank you so much for coming on here and, telling us stuff. It's not easy to talk about this stuff.
No.
But being open about it, because I think this will help people, and hopefully, maybe some other people will reach out to you that are struggling with things, because I'm sure your email is on the website.
Yep.
They can send you an email. I do want to say before we close out, if anybody has any topics they want to hear us discuss or any questions, reach out. You can email us through Foster's email. I believe it's fcarney at, how's y'all church email?
Yeah. FBCHTN.org.
And I'm sure we can put that in. Well, that'll be in the show description also, so you'll be able to see that. But if you have any, topics you want us to discuss, or if you want to be a guest on the show, reach out to us. We'd love to hear from you. If it's all right with you, I'm going to close this out in prayer, and we'll get heading into service and everything. God, I just want to thank you for giving us this platform to be able to reach other people, hopefully bringing them to you, letting them know that they have people they can relate to. Thank you for letting Mike be here and tell, the struggles that he's gone through his life, through divorce, through losing a child, through, adopting children, being a parent, just being so open and honest with us today. Help this podcast reach people for Christ. It's not about Foster. It's not about me. It's not about Mike. It's about reaching people for Jesus. Be with Mike as he goes through, and he's the director of missions and helping people lead other people to Christ. Be with everybody at this church, everybody that we can contact. In your name I pray. Amen.
Thank you for listening to this episode of The Path, a podcast production of the men's ministry of First Baptist Church in Hendersonville, Tennessee. For more information, or if you have questions, please visit our website at FBCHville.com. That's FBCHville.com.